Gaming reviews done quick now with 100% more dragons than the competition. Welcome to the 1 Minute Rundown. I'm OC Trinity, your host, and doesn't this show just beat all? This time we're running down Breath of Fire. This is Capcom's shot at the JRPG genre, popular around the late 90s. While each game's story is self-contained, though sharing a universe, it almost always involves a lead character named Ryu who can transform into a dragon, a winged princess named Nina, and a handful of other demi-humans that get involved in a quest that eventually leads them to chasing down some variation of a god figure. Ryu's dragon ancestry also had a role in the battle system, as he can transform into various dragons with different specialty skills, though frequently he wasn't the only one transforming. Beyond this, battles started out fairly generic, but moved on to include more, including observing and learning enemy skills, a tutoring system that changed the properties of leveling up, and much more. The last game took a completely different approach, instead being closer to a strategic, somewhat roguelike dungeon crawl. The series spans 5 games total. Let's take a look and see which of these are worth trying out. I recall liking this one when I was younger, but going back to it now, I gotta say, this is one of the most generic RPGs I've played. The story ends up being a fairly simple, collect the 6 key items and beat the main villain plotline, with the details, while functional enough, feeling more like they're written simply to connect the dots without explanation. The battle system is pretty much adapted straight from early RPGs like Dragon Quest without enough to keep things varied. Sure, Ryu has his dragon transformations, and another character has a skill that lets him fuse multiple characters into one, but that's about all in terms of uncommon battle features, and it's not like you're going to use these so constantly it changes much. And there are some pretty severe pacing issues. Just to cite a few, it's almost an hour before getting a new character that has any special skills, and there's one point around halfway through the game that enforces grinding just to buy a ridiculously expensive item. I'll give it credit for having a colorful world in multiple senses of the world, but that's it in what's otherwise a pretty average game. I can see this one attracting some of the usual JRPG fans, but it won't leave that much of an impression in the end. Conceptually speaking, this has possibly the most interesting story out of any game in its console generation. It's all about religion and how corruptible it and its followers can be, sometimes reaching a point more well-known religion-heavy games like Xenogears would be jealous of. It's a pity the dialogue is so generic. As far as gameplay goes, there are a few attempts to distinguish it from its predecessor. There's a few elemental shamans that can infuse with your characters, in some cases transforming them into someone else entirely with new stats and skills, but this bonus is lost as soon as that character's HP gets too low, which happens far too often to make this reliable. Each character also has unique free abilities, sort of like the SNES Final Fantasy games, though maybe half of them are actually useful. Honestly, I want to like this game more than I do, and on paper this should be a better game than the first, but there are 2 big reasons why I don't like it as much as the first game. First, because it is hard enough to require constant grinding, and second, because the game's way too vague about where you're supposed to go to advance the plot. Good effort, Capcom, but sorry, not quite there yet. Continuing on its quest to come up with less generic stuff, this is the game where examining to gain enemy skills and learning from tutors to augment how your characters level up are introduced. Admittedly, it's possible to get through the game without using much of these, but they're interesting to work with. Ryu's dragon transformations are also changed so it's possible to combine different genes, changing the end result of what you'll transform into, but also increasing the cost to maintain it. The story is essentially split into 2 acts, the first starting with Ryu as a child just trying to get by, and later moving to adulthood and learning what really happened to the rest of the dragons. And while it doesn't tread a lot of new ground, aside from perhaps not having a main villain through most of it does have some fun characters along the way. The fact is, it's simple and using a lot of tired and true mechanics, and I have a feeling the more hardcore JRPG crowd will enjoy this game and everyone else will give up before it really shows its true colors. But that said, it's also a much more well-balanced game, and it feels like where the series really found its stride. This time around, we get a much more inventive battle system. You have a 6-character party with 3 characters taking an action in whatever order you want, while the rest stay safe in the back recovering AP. There's also a loose combo system that provides extra damage when attacks with similar or complementary elements are used consecutively. It's really easy to figure out and opens itself up to giving everybody an important role, though it's not until the very end when you'll actually feel challenged. Some of the new features from the last game seem improved on too. Tutors now teach new skills on accomplishing certain goals, and learning enemy skills is easier than before. As far as plot goes, perspective switches between Ryu's party and an overpowered loner and spiritual twin, Fo Lu, both of which are searching for someone before their story arcs start intersecting. Again, nothing special, but enjoyable nonetheless. Really, everything else seems improved on, including pacing and balance, but there is one thing that feels like they went overboard on in a negative way, and that's random mini-games. Most of them aren't even interesting, but that's a pretty minor complaint in what's otherwise a great game. And now the game everyone claims killed the series. This game is canonically unrelated to the rest of the series and goes for an unnecessarily darker and edgier look with a few survival elements. The game takes place in a large underground bunker, with the ultimate goal of the game being to climb back to the surface of the Earth. That number you see in the upper right corner increases slowly as the game progresses, and even further on the use of Ryu's dragon transformations, and if it ever maxes out, it's instant game over. So if you mismanage your team, which is likely given the rarity of anything that restores HP, you're probably restarting the whole adventure, which the game actually gives you the option to do at any time, while retaining some of your party's stats and revealing more of the story. And I have a feeling that's going to scare away anyone from playing it, but don't let it, because this is a game I think everyone okay with turn-based gaming should play. Mostly because of the battle system, where you can string together as much movement and attacks as you want so long as you have enough AP. And this game will truly test your strategy skills. The game's hard, but it's a fair kind of hard, and worth the several hours of failure you'll inevitably endure. And I'm out of breath for this. And yes, that's the whole series. Interestingly, considering it's from a company known for the occasional crossover game, this one's been pretty much absent from it, which has also led people to claim that's probably been laid to rest entirely. Personally, I think that's likely because it's been 10 years without much acknowledgement of a new game, including a rumor that another company offered but was denied to buy the IP rights from the series from them. There is, however, the occasional re-release. The first two games jumped from the SNES to the GBA with some minor tweaks, while games 2 and 3 are on their respective consoles' digital download service. As far as similar games go, the Dragon Quest games have a similar old-school JRPG feel you might also enjoy. Check back in a couple weeks for the next episode of 1 Minute Rundown. The various Ryus and their friends have killed a god or two. Next time I'll show you a game whose lead character is killed many more. See you then! Oh yeah, I got an email from the producer that he wanted me to read. It says, Dear Mr. Trinity, at the end of your last episode you said you wanted to find some way to make future videos more exciting. After some careful consideration, I agree. Therefore, I'm sending you some guest stars to assist you for the next few episodes. Some have had starring roles in some of the games you're reviewing, so you and your audience may recognize them. I hope this helps you find more success and viewership with your show. Sincerely, the producer. Wonderful. Isn't the fact that we're using lots of guest stars a sign we've jumped the shark? Either way, it could be interesting. Oh yeah, I'm supposed to have a post-credits Easter egg by now, right? Well, here, post-credits Easter egg. Happy?